Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, Hogan ushers in a spirit of bipartisanship, but how long will that last? The governor submits his first budget with 2% cuts in agency spending. Hogan blocks O'Malley-era environmental bills, and the county council bans styrofoam cups. Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by former Majority Leader of the House of Delegates, John Hurson, former Maryland State Senator Gene Roesser, Maryland Republican National Committee woman Nicolee Ambrose, and education activist Cynthia Rubenstein. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. This past Wednesday, when Larry Hogan was sworn in as governor and Boyd Rutherford, a former panelist of 21 This Week, was sworn in as lieutenant governor, there were smiles all around in the Maryland State Senate chamber where the official swearing took place. Later, during the public ceremony, Mr. Hogan promised to usher in a new culture of tolerance and mutual respect to Annapolis. On Thursday, when Hogan submitted his first budget, the Baltimore Sun described it as not so drastic. But the Washington Post was not so kind, quoting House Speaker Michael Bush, who said, "There are a lot of issues that we have concerns with," adding that state employees, education, and health care seem to take the brunt of the hits. John, the new governor, increased funding for K through 12 and higher education. He maintained investment in school construction funding and avoided state worker furloughs and layoffs. So are you pleased with the first Hogan budget?
Well, he's a brand new governor, and he has a right to submit his view of the world, especially after his election, which was pretty impressive. But frankly, the budget is not going to be accepted by the legislature as it is. That's why we have a 90-day legislative session to consider the budget. I will tell you that I think you've mischaracterized some things in terms of his education funding. Montgomery County takes, as does Prince George's County, takes a huge hit in education funding. So I don't think it's going to go down easy, but he is entitled to present the priorities that he feels are right because he got elected pretty impressively. But now, the rubber meets the road, as they say in the business. And it's going to be a tough fight on this budget.
Well, I will point out that it wasn't my characterization of the budget. It was the characterization that the Baltimore Sun had of where the funding cuts were. So,
Casey, honestly, I mean, he has cut education funding to some counties. Prince George's County, Montgomery County, that has happened.
The Geographic Educational Index.
Well, I want to go to Gene on this because as a past legislator, Gene, there were three major construction projects that also survived, that being the hospital in Prince George's County, the Red Line in Baltimore, and the Purple Line. So having gone through the legislative process of making an omelet out of a budget, what do you think of this budget?
I think that given the time frame, it's a remarkable budget, and he calls for 2% reduction in the state workforce, which I believe could probably be accomplished through attrition. He has not. I don't think employees are going to be terminated. At least it'll be minuscule, and that's very modest. He did call for a cutback in the latest cost of living increase of the state workers, but so far no jobs have been lost or cut. So we'll see what happens there.
I agree with Gene on that. I think he's done a very admirable job on not kicking it really badly to state employees. It's just a cutback in their previous increase. So. In that sense, I think it's a very smart cut on his part from a political standpoint. I wouldn't do it, but it makes some sense.
Before I open up to the panel, I wanted to ask you, The fact that he didn't request any new taxes, is that something that he's going to be precluded from doing later on in the session?
I don't ever expect this governor to ask for new taxes.
Amen.
What he's
Not
working
gonna
on
happen.
Please, that better
What
be the
he's
case.
working on are tax cuts,
Correct.
which he obviously is having a little problem with right now, and that's being pushed back a little bit during the session, but we might see action on that.
I believe he specifically said to stay tuned. We'll get you more details on the tax cuts that we anticipate presenting. So I'm excited, very excited to see this. And I have to tell you, when people are referring to hits in state funding, I'm struck by two features. Number one, we are looking at a $40.4 billion budget for the state. That's more than New Jersey. That is more than Pennsylvania. And we're this tiny little state without such major cities. Big cities, yes, but not as big as New York and Philadelphia, say, in the case of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. We can do this. The question is not how much money we dump into things. The question is performance and metrics. So I'm really looking forward to some kind of more attentive management and better use of taxpayer dollars to make sure we get results with the money we're actually
I want to go to
spending.
Cynthia. Cynthia, you had a concern about education funding, so why don't you explain a little bit about what your concern is?
It costs more to educate students in Montgomery County and Prince George's, and so there's something called the geographic index, which puts more money into Montgomery County and Prince George's to compensate for the teacher salaries. And that funding has taken a big hit in this governor's budget. So,
Well, is that something that the county executive is going to have to fund, or is that just
no,
a
the county executive is
just
going to go
lost
to
dollars?
Annapolis and try to get it restored. But if it is not restored, yes, it would be a hit on Montgomery County's budget, and the county council and executive would
and
have to come
Montgomery
up with
County
it.
taxpayers.
And the tax, yeah, yes, the taxpayers.
So I will quote from last week's show, because newly elected state senator Cheryl Kagan was quoted as saying that that the governor-elect at that time wasn't showing a lot of love for Montgomery County. Is this something that we as Montgomery County residents have to worry about?
Here's the reality of the political map for Governor Hogan. The Republican Party needs to get this guy reelected. That is their number one mission, and I'm not sure they can do that. But part of that calculation is that he can't completely anger these large counties. I mean, we had very low turnout, and we're not going to necessarily vote for a Republican governor next time, but he can't make sure that we are like rabid against him. And that's a very important calculation for this governor.
Well, I think we also have to remember that it's more than just, I think he looks at things more than just a re-election effort. I think he looks at it as a good government effort. And that's the mission that he seems to be.
Well, I think that would be a very big mistake on the part of the governor.
Well, John,
it's very important for the Republican Party to get this guy reelected.
And the
because if they
reason-
don't, this party will relapse into where they were.
not only that, but it's redistricting coming up.
Yes.
It's hugely important that he
Nicolee, I'm going to let you
reelected.
wrap it up. We got about 30 seconds left in this segment.
I'd like to walk this back a few steps in terms of, I think the press is desperately trying to create a story of divisiveness here, and that is simply not the case. You have a governor
I
that was
agree with
just
you.
sworn in.
I don't think
2
it's
days
divisive at
ago.
all. I think he has an opportunity to actually create a opportunity. You know,
I agree,
an
and every
agreement.
step
Wait a minute,
he's taken
wait a
is
minute.
leading to that thus far. It's
We're
just the
gonna-
press
I'm
needs
gonna
to
stop
cover what's
this.
actually
I'm
going
going
on.
to stop this conversation because I want to focus on some other actions that he's already taken.
May I just
that-
say one quick thing?
No.
2 editorials, Washington Post, Baltimore Sun, have been quite positive about the budget.
Well, I'm glad nobody listens to me. So, one of the first things that the new governor did on this past Wednesday was to shelve several regulatory proposals of the former O'Malley administration. The most notable being a proposal to curb Eastern Shore farmers from using poultry manure on their fields as fertilizer, and another that dealt with emissions from coal-burning power plants. Cynthia, these rules were highly contested, but can we deduce anything from these actions? Does this mean that he's pro-business and anti-environment, or is it just too soon to tell?
Well, in the case of the poultry manure case, he was pro-farmers, and he promised the farmers that was going to be his first action, was to roll this back. But there's some mischaracterizations here too. This was a regulation 3 years in the making, and it is not removing all possibility of putting down poultry manure on fields. It's reducing and calculating the non-harmful amounts onto fields. Because at least 50% of what is contaminating the bay is phosphorus, and it's coming from animal waste.
Well, but as a regulation, the opportunity to reopen that rulemaking is the opportunity to readjust the percentages and the amounts that can be used
There is possible.
by the farming community.
Yes, that is possible. It will be looked at again. This was something that the governor took directly to the, through the agencies and not to the legislature and not for public comment. And so that'll be the way that it'll go.
And kudos to the staffer of Governor Hogan who realized that could not be implemented unless it appeared in the Register, the Maryland Register. And it had not appeared in the Maryland Register. So he was able to rescind it.
So Nicolee, how would you characterize these actions and the other actions that we've seen from the governor in putting together his legislative team?
So I believe any chief executive or president, name the position, has a responsibility to walk back midnight regulations and really study them and look at them. And so I'm proud of Governor Hogan for doing this, but I would quite frankly expect anyone to do such a thing with rushed, hastily, improperly foisted regulations that would dramatically affect people. In this case, the entire farming community on the Eastern Shore. Secondly, I would love to take Governor O'Malley and several of our legislators on tours of farms, because apparently they've never actually experienced the cycle of life. And for all of human history, manure is used to fertilize. It's a great, great thing. And so I'm
all right,
confused as to how anyone could
speak as a farm
object
girl.
to the cycle of life here.
I grew up on a farm.
I grew up on a farm. Here, family farms.
I grew up on a farm, and farmers are conservationists as well. And I'm sure that your Eastern Shore farmers want to find ways to protect the bay. So I think this is a matter of smart heads coming together, both from the rural Eastern Shore as well as environmentalists, to find a compromise to protect the bay and allow farmers to raise their chickens.
All right, I want to go back to John because I don't think the question was answered about whether or not this sends a signal to the type of governor that we have as to whether he's willing to challenge and on environmental matters in order to promote business.
I don't know yet, Casey. I don't think any of us know, but I think this governor has projected himself as very willing to challenge any state action that impacts business and really question it. He seems like the kind of guy who he really wants to make the state much more business friendly, and that's his thing.
We talk about the perception that Maryland has as being unfriendly to business, and so it seems to me that the governor is really making a very strong effort to show that there's a new mantra.
I think that's right, and I think that is his message. I don't think the perception of being anti-business is accurate, but I think that was his message, that was his focus, and that is his right now, given the election that he had, to make that a significant part of his message.
I would simply like to rephrase all of this. We're talking business, business, business. This is jobs. This is jobs. Would you like to have a producer of jobs on the Eastern Shore of Maryland other than a federal penitentiary?
No.
These are farm
what's the unemployment
jobs. These are
rate?
jobs that
What's the
feed
unemployment
us.
unemployment rate in Maryland?
It was
what
over
is it?
6%, and it's been going up.
No,
well,
and
everyone
it's
else
getting
has been going
lower
down.
and
We're going
lower.
up.
I mean, let's
There
be
are
realistic.
pockets.
about this.
There are
I mean,
pockets of high unemployment.
Of course there are.
And
And it's in
we're-
the African American community. It's in places like Prince George's County.
In Western Maryland.
In Western Maryland.
Where
How is
fracking
he
would be a
going to
wonderful
address
thing.
that specifically, other than being like
I
this guy
could-
who wants more business?
I
You know
couldn't
what?
agree with you more. I can't wait for jobs. And guess what? I want all these 20-somethings who can't even get a job to start their careers, to build their resume, to buy a home, to get married, to have kids.
This
I
is the
want
Re-
them
this
to
is
get
the
a
Republican
job.
talking point.
You know,
It's
this is-
not
this is-
related to Maryland.
Welcome.
It's not related to Maryland.
John and
sweetheart.
Nicolee,
I'd love
this is
to
going to
do
be
that.
great because for the next 4 years, we're going to be able to sit here and debate how
Lively debate.
debate how effective the new governor is. Stay tuned when we come back because we're going to talk about the Montgomery County Council and their pinhead idea about banning styrofoam products. And welcome back. This past week, your Montgomery County Council passed legislation sponsored by Councilmember Heinz Reimer to ban the sale of polystyrene plastic foam products. Styrofoam, in other words. And in his press release, Member Reimer justified the action because a growing list of progressive communities also ban these foam products. Opponents of the bill pointed out that for every $1 now spent on styrofoam food service products, small businesses will have to spend at least $1.94 on alternative replacements. John, it seems to me that this is just feel-good legislation, and the county could be spending more time and effort trying because they don't have any ideas how to help the business community in Montgomery County.
Well, that's such a nonpartisan question. I'm not exactly sure
It's a
how to
provocative
address
question.
it.
It
It's
is
a
a provocative
question.
question. It is a provocative question. People like these products,
Yeah.
and the elimination of these products seems trivial.
Okay, so let's start at a more global level, which is it's not appropriate, in my opinion, for local governments to start banning this or that ingredient because, or packaging or something. Frankly, that's a larger question that should be dealt with at the state or federal level because it doesn't make sense at a local level to do this. So if I really like the eggs that you're showing there, a little
We got it.
show a little the thing there.
These Eggland organic eggs?
These are organic eggs that are packaged in some styrofoam, and I think there's a lot of people in Montgomery County who want to buy organic eggs. So do we want them to go shopping in D.C. or Prince George's County or Frederick County? We don't want to do that. I mean, I think there should be some common sense about the capabilities of a local government to actually ban certain things. I just don't
All
think
right.
that's
Well, so
smart.
I want to, Nicolee, the slogan on the left is "Think globally, act locally." Shouldn't the slogan for Montgomery County be "Think locally, act locally"?
Or just let's drive every single job and bit of tax revenue we can out of the county. Here's the deal. If you want to ban styrofoam, do an education campaign. If you are so convinced as a Montgomery County Council member that this is the root of all evil in the world, do an education campaign on it. For the government to take this as their purpose of being, to micromanage on this level, I find it offensive, and I think they'll get the opposite of what they're expecting and not the results they hope to achieve
Well, I just think
whatsoever.
it's a small potato issue. Jean.
I take a different view of this. First place, that is the only egg that I know of that uses styrofoam. So there are plenty of organic eggs out there. Most eggs are in paper containers and so forth. I happen to think it's a good idea.
My gosh, Jean and I.
I
but
think
here's-
it's a good
We're on
idea.
the same
I
page.
talked to a friend of the family today, and I said, John, what do you think of this? He says, I think it's good. This man goes out every single morning before sunrise, picks up trash and litter in a section of Muddy Branch Stream in Gaithersburg. He says after a rain, this styrofoam breaks up. It breaks up into small pieces. It goes into the streams. It harms the fish, the little lives in the sea. I mean, the stream, on out into the tree. It's very harmful stuff.
Then let's do a recycling program. Let's,
So I can see merit to this.
Why are we going to have another regressive tax on
says talking regressive tax?
It's absolutely a regressive.
Why?
It's a ban.
Because
It's
you're
a
going
ban.
to
It's not a
increase
tax.
the cost of food products that you and I are going to buy.
And
Because if
we're
it only
going to
costs
keep-
$1
and we're gonna
to
keep-
produce
we're-
one of
we're
these,
gonna keep
it's
this
going to cost
insidious stuff out of the
$1.94.
streams.
94,
That's-
almost double.
No, that can't be in the world of economics. It's just not going to happen.
But the
I don't
point is,
I don't
why should
accept
at the
that
county,
premise.
why at the county level should we be doing this?
Well, it's a start. Like the bag tax that you don't like, that's taken hold, and people are bringing.
Jean's right. It's a start. It's a start, and
I'm sorry, but
that
I
can
am an
spread to other
environmentalist.
jurisdictions to stem the supply of this insidious crap.
It is crap.
out of streams.
And it probably
well,
is
I'm
far
a
more expensive
conservationist. I'm not an
downstream than here.
environmentalist. And I know you're trying to poke the bear when you brought up the bag tax because you know it infuriates me. We have to go, unfortunately. You can thank your county council if you are for the banning of styrofoam, and you can thank them if you're against it. Stay tuned for Parting Shots when we come back from this short break.
These days.
And welcome back. Now with Parting Shots, John Hurson.
I just want to do a shout out to one of our colleagues on the show, Steve Krasewski, who just had a major operation, and I think he's recovering and doing well. I'd be shocked if he's actually watching the show, but for all those who know Steve, we're all thinking about him and hoping he's going to do great. So that's my parting shot.
Thank you, John. Gene Roesser, your parting shot.
This was mentioned last week, but we do mourn and salute Nancy Dasick, who passed away this month. And she was an outstanding public service member of the county council for three terms. Did a stellar job on the Board of Elections, respected by and loved by everyone who knew her. She will be missed, and her memorial service will be held on Wednesday, January 28th at the Black Rock Arts Center in Germantown. And she will be memorialized, and deservedly so. She was a stellar citizen of Montgomery County and friend.
Lovely thought, Gene. Thank you. Nicolee, Ambrose, your parting shot?
So I'm going to mix it up with sports here. I'd like to focus on the fact that it has been confirmed that in this last playoff game, 11 of the 12 Patriots game balls were underinflated. And what this brings me to is I am just so sick of ends justifies the means, whether it's in sports, being football in this case, or politics, or just community life. It's a horrible example for America. It's an even worse example for our children. And we, whether it's the NFL or every part of life we contribute to, we have got to change this downward slope we're on and end the days of ends justifies the means.
Thank you, Nicolee. Cynthia, your parting shot.
Okay, in the world of Montgomery County Public Schools, our superintendent is up for will he stay or will he go? And the Board of Education is going to be, well, he's deciding and letting know whether or not he wants another 4 years, and I believe he does. The Board of Education has to decide whether or not they are happy enough with his accomplishments so far to extend his contract 4 years. So stay tuned. This is going to be happening very soon. His contract is up in June, and he has to make known to the Board of Education by February 1st if he wants his contract extended. And there are some rumblings on the school board that make it not a sure thing.
Well, we'll talk about it next week. I think that's a great topic. I wanted to pick up on something that John said. If you might have caught an interview that Boyd Rutherford, the newly elected lieutenant governor, had with PBS over on the swearing-in day, you might have heard him mention the fact that it was Steve Kraszewski who brought him out of the federal government into the Maryland Secretary of General Services Administration. And our good friend, I'm sure, would have loved to have been in Annapolis this past week, and I'm so happy that he's doing well. So thank you, panel, for being here. We had a great, lively debate on a snowy Friday night. I want to thank the viewers for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken.